books sold, Frederick Forsyth has decided the time has come to put down his pen and take up the cause he has long championed, getting Britain out of the EU. His stance, he says, can be summed up simply in just 5 words: I want my country back. Welcome. Now, before we get on to the details of some of this, you've been a long-term Eurosceptic. Does this go right the way back to the 1970s and the beginning of the project?
Before that, when I was with Reuters, I was based in Paris but sent north to Brussels in 1962, which is... a while back. I'm not even going to ask what you were doing in 1962.
I was 3 years old in 1962.
So, I became interested then, and I've kept a sort of wary eye on the EU ever since. Back then, it was only 6 nations, and it was the common market, which we joined. It's obviously, since then, it's transformed itself into the EU. Very basically, I don't believe this is about trade at all. We're always going to trade with Europe. We always have, we always will. As for tariff barriers and things, they've mainly been sort of abrogated by the World Trade Organization. So what I call the diversion we're being subjected to at the moment is a con trick, because it's not going to be about economics. It's about 2 clashing governmental systems. Ours is parliamentary democracy. Europe is a non-parliamentary, democratic commission of bureaucrats, basically. It's a bureaucracy. You can have one system to govern you or the other, but you can't have both. They're mutually incompatible. And I prefer our system.
Now, I called you earlier on an MI6 man, very carefully, not calling you an agent, you weren't paid and so forth, but you know a lot about MI6. We can't have a spook on this programme, it's not done, ask about whether or not we would be more or less secure in terms of intelligence in or outside the EU. But I wonder, you're still in touch with that world, what you think?
I have a few contacts in it. Basically, I think an example, is the discovery of this enormous list of ISIL terrorists, their sort of CVs. It's huge, and like so many things, it was an Anglo-American discovery, coup, if you like. So nothing to do with the EU, and therefore, were we not in the EU, I don't think there'd be any damage to our security system. We would cooperate as we always do on a bilateral basis with those who have a damn good counterintelligence service, like the Italians and the Germans and the French. So
we cooperate with individual countries, but there is no kind of EU organisation which helps out MI6.
Well, if you put a very, very covert or classified document in front of the EU, that's 28 nations, there's 27 partners and us, it would be in our opponent's hands within the hour. So there is this thing called security. You've got to trust people you collaborate with in that world.
One of the ironies of this, of course, is that people say that Putin would like to see us out of the EU and so forth, but actually the Russians are again quite high up in our list of potential enemies.
Yes, a newly resurgent Kremlin is indeed a worry. I've been told that there are now more active Russian agents in this country than there were in the Cold War, which is quite saying something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But on the other hand, in some areas like Daesh or ISIL, we have common interests because they have problems with Chechnya, and some of the most lethal IS agents are in fact Chechens. So we can cooperate with them on that area, but in other areas they have their own very much anti-British agenda.
How concerned would you be about Turkey joining the EU? It's clearly on the glide path. It's not going to happen soon, but there's going to be visa-free access for all Turks coming up.
Well, it's a major security problem because it is the big land bridge between the terror zone and Europe.
And your most recent novels were about Islamist terrorism and the Far East.
I touched on that subject twice, and the second time, yes, was more or less. I just chose Al-Shabaab, which is the Somali terror group. But I mean, there are about 20 now. It's not just ISIL, but there are quite a few subordinate ones that now are pledging loyalty to ISIL. And ISIL, as we know, is setting up in Libya. So, this is a long-haul fight.
You've been a long-term monarchist and supporter of the monarchy. What do you think about the Queen being dragged into this? Do you have some sympathy with Buckingham Palace throwing it?
Yes, well, we're talking about a lunch that took place about 4 to 5 years ago. I happen to take the view it wasn't the source, if source there was, if it wasn't an invention by the media, actually probably didn't come from any of the 4 notable guests that day. I suspect I know where the source was, and it wasn't any of them. Least of all, poor Michael Gove.
Yeah. Now you've given up novels, but you haven't given up writing. You're writing lyrics. Tell us about your new project.
Okay, yes, I did. I wrote a poem, a 16-line poem, which became a lyric, which was put to music. I think a brilliant piece of music freshly composed and sung by Melissa, and it's called Fallen Soldier, and it's I just thought it was time to put into words a tribute to all the boys who went out from this country in uniform and never came back.
It's a veteran's lament, and it's on at the Royal Opera House, is that right? Or it's being performed around?
No, I don't think so. But mind you, the singer Melissa is a professional singer at the Royal Opera House. But it's way up there on iTunes. It's not my world, not our world.
It's not our world.
iTunes.
Frederick Forsyth, thank you very, very much indeed for joining me this morning.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.